we both have as a playoff team. That's the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
They should bounce back strong once again. Bo Nix still on the rookie deal. Who knows? Bo Nix could have been in the Super Bowl if he didn't suffer that fluke injury on like the second to last play of the game. Anyways, the big news out of Denver, you alluded to this earlier, is Sean Payton is giving up play calling duties and handing the baton to a 31-year-old named Davis Webb, who you may remember as a backup quarterback just a few years ago. Here's Payton.
With regards to play calling, it's something that, you know, I think he'll be really good at it. And I know that's like, man, are you going to give up play calling? And I would only do that if I felt like it would help our team. I'll still be involved with what we do offensively, just like what we do defensively. But I do think he has a gift. I think he's real sharp. I'm glad he's on our staff.
Yeah, and if you don't let him do that, he's going to leave. So I think Sean Payton is, you got to do this sometimes. You know, it's like Sean McVay's lost really good people. Sometimes you have to, you got to trust him. And my take is Sean Payton likes control. Even in the draft, he likes a say. He would not do this if he didn't think Davis Webb was really special. He didn't have to do this. He's choosing to do this.
Colin, he was tight with Lombardi. They were tight forever, man.
Yeah, but a lot of times you can be tight with a coach, but you don't necessarily, the fit is good. A lot of times you work with people, and are they as good as the guy across the street? Maybe not, but you like the personality, you like the fit, you trust them. And I think Sean Payton really liked Lombardi and trusted him, and they worked well together, and he was more than competent. But to relinquish the play calling duties, that's next level. And I also think Davis Webb has a reputation and the kind of aspirational growth. Like, if you don't do this, he's going to move on, and then Sean is stuck calling plays for the rest of his career.
Boy, I just hope you don't Lombardi me at some point. Fortunately, I'm more Ben Johnson than Lombardi. That's obvious. All right, let's go to the...
Yeah, this is a genuinely fascinating development. I touched on this subject a little while back, and in fact, I already produced a video specifically focused on it in relation to Davis Webb. But I was particularly eager to hear Colin's perspective on the matter, given how strongly he advocates for the offensive, play-calling head coach. I know how much he believes in Sean Payton, and he's a firm believer in the value brought by offensive minds who manage the game themselves. Guys like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Andy Reid, and on the defensive side, someone like Mike McDonald. This philosophy is exactly why he's consistently called out coaches like Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni, emphasizing instead the value of their coordinators like Ben Johnson. So, the news that Sean Payton is giving up his play-calling duties? This is not some minor, trivial adjustment. It's not in the same category as, oh well, if he doesn't do it, they might lose Davis Webb. This is Sean Payton. He is supposed to be the definitive brains of the operation. The play caller, the game manager, the strategic planner. That is his identity. That is what his reputation is built upon. Colin himself recently made a statement along the lines of, "It doesn't matter which coaches leave the Rams staff, because it's Sean McVay. I'm never worried about the coaching there, because it's Sean McVay." And that logic makes perfect sense. It's completely understandable. But here's the paradox he's now facing with the Broncos. The argument has been that if you don't let Davis Webb call the plays, he'll eventually get poached by another team. But if you do let Davis Webb call the plays and the offense looks fantastic under his direction, then he's going to leave anyway to become a head coach somewhere else. You're essentially in a no-win situation regarding coordinator retention. That is the giant question mark hanging over this entire situation. As I mentioned in my previous clip, the way Sean Payton addressed this, his rationale was essentially, you're probably thinking, are you really going to give up play calling, Sean? But I just believe he's smart, he's ready, and so on. And it's like, yeah, okay. But now Colin is framing it as, oh, you're not stuck calling plays for the rest of your life. And sure, that's the ultimate goal for many coaches, to build a program where you can delegate. But this move implies that Sean Payton, at some level, feels he is no longer the absolute best person for that specific job. When I kind of floated that question in the community, some people brought up a point that I haven't been able to fully verify or fact-check. So, if anyone has information on this, please let me know. The claim is that Payton himself has admitted to being slower, that he's not getting plays out as quickly as he used to, that maybe he's lost a mental step. Is there truth to that? It's certainly possible. You see this phenomenon in many high-level cognitive fields. Think about someone who's a legitimate super genius, like one of the most successful Jeopardy! Players of all time. Not Ken Jennings, but the other guy, Brad Rutter. I recall an interview where they asked him about competing as he got older, whether it's similar to an athlete whose physical skills decline. He gave a very honest answer. He said something to the effect of, "For me, I still feel like I know the answers. I still have the knowledge, but I can't retrieve the answer as quickly as I used to. I still know that 1 + 1 = 2, but it just takes me an extra fraction of a second longer than it did before." And in Jeopardy, that fraction of a second is the difference between buzzing in first and not getting to answer at all. That cognitive processing speed inevitably slows down for everyone as they age. It's not a surprise that a head coach, especially one responsible for the lightning-fast decisions required in play calling, might feel that same effect. I'm not going to speculate on whether that's the definitive reality for Payton, because it's virtually impossible for someone like me, or any of us watching from home, to know for sure. We just don't have that inside information. But the principle is sound. You see similar examples in other sports, like Formula One. They talk about how drivers in their early 30s might not be as sharp as they were at 25. It's not a matter of physical strength or endurance. It's about the eyes, the reflexes. You just don't process visual information as quickly. Your ability to judge depth and speed is ever so slightly diminished. Your confidence to make that one aggressive, split-second move is just a fraction less than it was. And in any competitive arena, all it takes is a fraction. In football, we see this with players. Losing a millisecond is the difference between getting open and making a catch, or having the ball broken up. It's the difference between escaping a sack and getting tackled. It's the tiniest of margins. And it stands to reason that the same principle applies to coaching and play calling, albeit on a cognitive level. So I do find that aspect of the conversation incredibly interesting. However, another theory I've seen floated is that this wasn't entirely Sean Payton's decision. Some suggest it was more forced upon him, and he's now trying to put a positive spin on it to save face. I have a hard time buying that. I find it incredibly difficult to believe that anyone within the Denver Broncos organization has the authority, or the inclination, to walk into Sean Payton's office and tell him, "You're no longer calling the plays." Say what you will about him, but Sean Payton is the single biggest reason the Broncos are where they are right now. He is the architect. He was the driving force behind moving on from Russell Wilson. He was instrumental in drafting Bo Nix. He built the team that achieved the best record in the AFC last year and secured the #1 seed. Quite frankly, they should have made the Super Bowl and had a real chance to win it. He is the architect of that success. I'm not saying he's flawless, and I'm not saying he didn't make mistakes. I certainly blamed him for some of the decisions in the AFC Championship game. It's not an all-or-nothing evaluation. But he is the architect. If he is not the head coach, that team is not in the position they're in today. I fully believe that. I have to imagine that the people in the Broncos organization, who are truly making the high-level decisions, the ones cutting the checks, the ones with the ultimate power, I'm not so sure they have the football authority or the desire to overrule him on a football decision like this. I find it hard to believe anyone said, "Sean, we want Davis Webb to call the plays." If you have information that contradicts that, please, let me know. Definitely let me know. I talk about this all the time. I don't have all the answers. I see this community as an extension of the conversation, and I rely on you all to provide context and information I might not have. That's why I read the comments. So, if there's some internal dynamic in Denver where the front office or ownership forced this, I'm all ears. If that's the case, then he essentially had his play-calling duties revoked. That would paint this entire situation in a very different light. Either way, regardless of the reason, it's a weird situation. To me, it's just a weird situation. Now, I'm not saying it's the wrong decision or a bad move for the team. I cannot emphasize that enough. I'm not judging it as right or wrong. But when you are someone as highly regarded as Sean Payton, and you're voluntarily, or otherwise, giving up play calling, something that should be one of your core superpowers, it makes you pause. It's noteworthy. This leads me to wonder, is he still the architect of the offense? Is he still the one who is all in on the game planning, the overall strategy, and the macro-level game management, but simply not the one speaking into the headset on every down? And then you get into the murky area of how that actually works in practice. I touched on this in my other video. Does he still have the final say? Can he say, I want you to run this concept here? Or, hey, we're going to be aggressive on 4th down, so keep that in mind on 3rd down. We're in 4-down territory, so take a deep shot on 1st if you want. I don't know. That's always been the confusing part for me when trying to parse the dynamic between a non-play calling head coach and his coordinator. It's hard to know how much influence the head coach has and how often they interact during the game. There's a famous mic'd up moment from the Super Bowl with Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore, right before Jalen Hurts threw that dagger to Devonta Smith. You only really hear the tail end of the conversation, where Sirianni says something like, just call it. If we get it, we win. Now, for all I know, Kellen Moore could have said, this is what I'm thinking of calling. You good with it? And Sirianni just gave the green light. Or Sirianni could have been the one suggesting the specific play. Those are two completely different things. To stick with the Eagles example, because we get a lot of mic'd up moments with them, think about the famous Philly special. Nick Foles marched right up to Doug Peterson and said, Philly special. And Doug Peterson said, okay. Doug Peterson didn't storm out onto the field and call that play himself. It was Nick Foles' idea. Doug Peterson still had to give the go-ahead. He had to authorize it. But if we hadn't heard that mic'd up moment, we would have no idea. History would have recorded it as Doug Peterson being a genius for calling that trick play. But he didn't call it. It wasn't his idea. He just gave the okay. There's a massive difference there. It's the same with the back-and-forth conversations we imagine between Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. Who is the one truly deciding to go for it on 4th down? What if Dan Campbell says, we're going for it, and Ben Johnson says, I think we should kick the field goal here? Has that ever happened? We don't know. The public never gets that visibility. So it just complicates things. We don't know how this will fully unfold in practice in Denver. It's going to be interesting, and honestly, I'm always up for change and newness. As great a coach as Sean Payton is, and as much as I believe in his overall football mind, I've never personally placed him on the same tier of pure offensive genius as an Andy Reid, or even at the level we see now with a Shanahan or McVay. That's probably why I'm a bit more open to this change for him. I do trust his football intellect, his ability to run a team, his ability to make those hard organizational decisions, and to be the architect. But the question of whether he has lost a step from a pure on-field Sunday night play-calling perspective is valid. Has that time passed him by? Could be. But then, you have to look ahead. What happens when Davis Webb inevitably moves on? Because if he is the right hire, if this offense thrives under his direction, he will be gone after this coming year. He'll be a head coach somewhere. Then what does Sean Payton do? Does he have to go out and hire another play caller? Does he just resume the duties himself? It's an endless cycle. I don't know. It's a puzzle with no clear solution. The moment I heard that Andy Reid gave up play calling, I'd be shocked. If Sean McVay gave it up, you'd take a step back and say, really? Huh. Okay, that's interesting. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now with Sean Payton. It's a significant departure from the norm for a coach of his stature. So, let me know your thoughts on this. I read every single comment. Whether you agree with me or disagree, either way, let's get some discussions going. Let's have some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun with it. And please do consider subscribing to the channel. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you be a part of it. My goal is to build something we all genuinely feel connected to, something we're truly excited to be a part of. I think we are well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.